Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Ferris Makes Demos. Hold on, let me check something here. Okay, we're good. This is episode 33, and I just realized that this is actually the first demo scene stream I've done this year. I gotta be honest, I was a bit surprised about that. I thought I had done more of these, but I guess I hadn't since we had CBDT of Monad on last year. I guess with the hardware stuff and playing Earthbound and things like that, just never really got off the ground with doing these streams this year. But here we are now, after what I would consider to be an extremely successful revision in many respects. I had an absolute blast this last weekend. It was really, really awesome. Apologies if any of you guys tried to reach me, especially on like Twitter or Facebook or something. I was pretty disconnected while working on a lot of this stuff, which I guess is pretty natural, but you know, it's demo sceners around Easter have varying degrees of availability, so that's just how it is. But anyway, yeah, I was super happy with this weekend. I personally participated in the live coding compos, which was really fun, even though I was out the first round, but I was out against Provod, who did a really great job, so shout outs to him. And also thanks to Havoc and the rest of the team for actually having me be a part of that. That was really fun. I participated in the tracked music with the rest of Logicoma, which, speaking of which, this Sunday, I'm going to have another demo scene stream where Hoffman's going to come on and talk about how we did that. So I'm not going to mention that too much here, just in order to save all that for Sunday. I'll mention that again at the end of this, so in case you guys missed that announcement, you can hear about it later. Also participated in the 64K compo. We made something called Iota, which is actually, I think it's a pretty cool demo. At least... yeah, exactly. I'll comment on the track. It's a demo. Again, I'm trying not to mention too much of that, but I'm really happy about it, and we'll talk about that on Sunday, so that'll be really cool. But yeah, Iota was a really quick 64K we did, and the story behind it actually is the fourth thing that I participated in, which was Logicoma had a live set, which was absolutely incredible from our point of view. That's the only point of view I can speak of, but we have gotten a lot of positive feedback, and I'm just really thrilled that happened because... You know, we worked really hard to pick out the right tracks and really put that together and make it a proper set. And at the same time, you know, produce some new visuals to kind of springboard us from where we were last summer with the Evoke live show that we did. We wanted to basically take the same format that we had then, but kind of scale it up and do something bigger and better. And it was actually really, really, really successful, I think. So I'm absolutely thrilled. It was an extremely fun time. And I'm just still kind of riding a high and blown away with the entire weekend as a whole, because even the things that I didn't participate in directly were really, really cool. The 64K compo, for example, had an amazing entry by Conspiracy. The demos were really great. 4K was another amazing year. And all the other compos and all the other stuff and all the people I got to see. So I'm also sorry if any of you guys were at the party and we didn't really get a chance to talk or meet or anything. I was around... and would have been happy to say hi, but, you know, revision is kind of that way sometimes because it is so many people that you see like once a year, so you often don't have time to talk to everyone. But anyway, I had a great time. It was an amazing party, so thanks again to the revision organizers and everyone putting that together for making that happen. It was really great. And as a side benefit, also, because we played the live set, we also got free drinks throughout the party, which was also really, really cool. Of course, the party's amazing without that stuff as well, but it's just kind of... even another little thing to just bump all that up. So it was really, really, really great. Yeah. A couple things. Also, thanks to Sensenstahl, I think is how you say it. I always have a hard time saying his name, but he does great 256-byte intros as well as stonemasonry. He made us this Logicoma logo stone. This is a lot heavier than it looks, but it's just a really cool thing to have. I love when this stuff shows up. It's just so so cool to have a physical artifact like this. Showing this again because I think Studio C asked about this on Twitter. So there you go. There's the stone. Thunk. Got a ton of little stickers and stuff. I think there's a TRSI sticker we got that I think I misplaced. Got a couple Evoke little ad things here with some fun pictures. Got some Poo Brain stickers, including this one that says 64K power. That's pretty cool. I have my artist badge around here somewhere, but I don't know where it is. So yeah, all that is really, really cool. By the way, hi to guys in the chat. Need to say hi to those people. Skeleton, Daru 2, 286 Tech, Alkama, how's it going? Really good seeing you, by the way, Alkama, at the party. Chief Detector, Bit and N first, Studio C, H. Karayan, Dark Second. By the way, Dark Second, yeah, the MIDI stuff from the last demo streams, that was actually for Evoke last summer. And then this year, well, I'll talk about this later, but we kind of resurrected that project and then kept building on it. And I'll get to that in a sec. Evil Axe, Sauce Haas, Love Like Semtex, Creekpot, Provod GL, how's it going, man? By the way, Provod GL, follow him. He also does demo scene stuff. He is the guy who beat me in the first round of the shader compo. I still have yet to watch the playbacks of any of the streams because I came back to revision and I guess the power had gone out and I actually had no internet in my apartment until today. So I'm going to totally scour those later today, but I haven't seen them yet. Anyway, go watch that too because it was probably, at least I had a great time, so it was probably pretty cool. Also, G. Superlin, really good seeing you at the party. That was really fun. Glad we had a chance to talk properly. Truck, also glad to see you at the party. So you see my highlight was Truck and the rest of the crew dancing to Koku, yeah, Koku and Finspread and the continuation of the meme. Of course, it's very important to to react to those things properly when on stream. Dare Green. Dare Green, whose channel? It's Provod GL. You'll see him in the chat. Awesome, G Superland. Yeah, we had to close the set with Rage Against the Machine. So the reason why I'm talking about the live set visuals and Iota together is if you have seen the demo and everything. Oh, sorry, Provod GL. I actually don't have links enabled, but I'll link to your Twitch here, which I'm guessing is what you did. Sorry about that. I'll link that for you. There we go. Bam. Oh yeah, and thanks to Superland. Just realized you did that as well. Oh, he linked the revision party Twitch. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna enable links for Provod. Hold up here. Cause that I should have anyway. Give me a second here. We'll fix this. Regulars, add user. Submit. All right, yeah, sorry about that, Provod. You should be able to post the link now. Oh yeah, and also extra shout outs to Alkama who DJ'd while we were doing the shader compo. I was really happy he did and played a bunch of 4 on the floor stuff, which really fit with the idea that I had at the time. I don't have that shader on this machine, so maybe I can dig it up or something, but anyway. What I wanted to do now, actually, is start by watching our Iota 64K. I don't want to say too much about it. I think it can kind of speak for itself, and I'll talk a lot about where this came from as we sort of move on with the stream, because it's, of course, extremely related to the live show visuals, if you guys have seen both of those. So I'm just going to mute myself and hit play. I'll just let this play in the demo tool, and you can see, by the way, it's very, very fast, and I'll talk about that as well. But yeah, I'll just set that up now. Yeah, so that was Iota. It placed fourth in the 64K compo, which I think was really fitting. A lot of strong entries in the compo. So super happy with that. We spent a week on this. Literally did not know we were going to have an entry until last Sunday. Although I had a feeling on Friday that we might. In fact, when I think Conspiracy a few weeks before the party called a bunch of 64K groups out and just like, roll call, what are you guys up to? And we didn't have anything at the time, so we said, yeah, we're gonna be there, but without an intro. So gotta freeze on the frame with the logo. It's important. Anyway, so this really started as, again, I revived the Evoke live show project because we knew we were preparing the live show. So I revived the project. Like, I took last week off, first of all. So Saturday, I revived the live show project from Evoke. And then Sunday, I started on a particle system because I knew I wanted to do some particle depth of field stuff. That's kind of all I knew about. And I'll get to some of the work in progress pictures, but that just actually went really well. So the next few days, I was having people over just to be part of the sort of creative mass that is my living room. And and I just kept making like just a lot more kind of test scenes in it. And it just kept looking good, at least to my eye. And I was just having so much fun that by the time I think Monday or Tuesday hit, Wobble's just like, I can do a soundtrack to that. So he started doing that, and then that started coming together really fast. Hoffman got his hands dirty with that stuff as well. And just a lot of kind of back and forth. And by the time, Wednesday rolled around, we were looking pretty good. So Thursday we traveled to the party, and we had some hours in the airport. And by that time I had a bunch of screenshots of different scenes that I had made while just playing with this stuff. And so we kind of storyboarded out how it would probably look based on the scenes that we had already made. And then Friday, we banged out the tracked music stuff, which again, we'll talk about on Sunday. So tune in for that. And then Friday night, or actually also Thursday late into the night, and then Friday late into the night, we just kind of worked and just polished everything. And we were done 4 a.m. or so on Saturday, and then just entered it, and that was it. Probably could have spent some extra time polishing, but at this point, we may do a final, but if we do, I'm just going to make a couple scenes brighter, maybe bump up the amount of particles, because as you can see, this is well over 60 FPS here. My frame time is around 6 or 7 milliseconds on my 1070 here. And there's a really good reason for that. Basically, I made these visuals as an extension of the live show project again. I'll get to what it actually looks like in that setup a little bit later. And I had made that on my main PC, which has, a 1070 graphics card. And I basically do everything in the vertex shader when I actually do all these particles. And I was actually able to push a couple million particles most of the time. They get kind of large when you're doing this depth of field stuff. So that may not sound as high as you should be able to push nowadays, but it is when you start drawing particles that are that large and doing that much blending. And that's just how it is. But I'm pretty happy with how it looks. But when I move this over to my laptop, which has an 870M in it, that actually became a big problem. We were totally vertex shader bound. At that point, I could have done geometry shaders or compute or something, but I didn't really feel like I had time to move everything over and hack it. And in fact, I was actually mistaken. I think I told Trevor at the party that I had just added compute shaders in our tool. I actually haven't done that yet. For some reason, I was thinking that I had, but I haven't done that yet. I want to do that next, but not quite. So I didn't feel like I had time to hack it. So we just reduced the amount of particles and everything, so that I was able to, like, it was kind of a balancing decision. Either I lower everything or I just keep it really slow and just kind of try to sync it anyway. I decided to lower everything so that I could get an accurate representation of the sync as I was working on it on the laptop. And I think that was a good decision because that kind of allowed us to push this to the level of polish that we needed to sort of get away with doing something this simple. So I'm really happy with that decision, even though now it seems really wasteful because there's a lot of headroom here. Yeah, exactly, Alkama. I actually dropped Mac support specifically so I could start adding compute. But so far, I've only dropped the Mac support. I haven't actually added the compute. The name Iota, by the way, it just comes from, like, we were looking at synonyms for particle, and Iota means a really small amount. And I thought that fit the demo, first of all, because it is all particles. Second of all, because we didn't spend that much time on it. So that's where it comes from. I did sleep during the week. It's actually when I show you guys how a lot of this stuff is built up. It's a lot simpler than it looks, I think. It was just I was just having a blast working on this, and I had nothing else to do, of course, because I took last week off. So, but yeah, we literally started this on Sunday. By the way, hi Daniel Collin, hi Tropical Trevor. Hoffman is also here. It's pretty cool. Yeah, and this probably really did not treat the encoder very nicely, but yeah. So yeah. I also, if you guys had caught some of the later streams last year, I started working on a new sequencer, and I actually just forked out and removed that for this, because again we did this so quickly that I didn't have time to finish the sequencer, and I hadn't worked on it since then. So I just brought back in Rocket, and that's what we did. I think though the best way to show this actually is to jump over to the Liveshow project, because this has a bunch of sync in it now. And I'm actually going to jump over there so I can kind of mess with this stuff and show you. So I should just be able to open it. Hey, Bomb. Thanks again for playing that track of mine from like 2011 in your set. That was really surprising. Really pleasant surprise. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that, Dark Second. It'd be fun to meet you at Soul Queen. I don't know how busy I'll be there either, but we'll see. I'm the kind of guy that goes to parties and sticks his face in a laptop most of the time, but I have fun. Where's my live set? Revision live show .demo. And I think this just works. It does. Cool. So a couple things you might notice here. I'm just hitting all the effects to make sure all the shaders get loaded. A couple things you might notice here. Everything's running at a little bit lower resolution. And that was the same way with the Evoke set. We do that just because, again, it had to run on my laptop, which doesn't have the beefiest stuff. The reason I bring this up is because I can show you a little bit more clearly what's going on here. Actually, let me render full res here. A couple other things I did with the tool, by the way, is I can hide all these dockable windows. So if I hit like F11, this goes full screen. I don't know if I've shown that before, but we don't need the profiler. I'll bring up the operators, and I will. Let's just call render actually. Palm, thanks for the follow. Oops, what's my thing doing all the way up there? Bring that down. So I think I can just do render here. We should be fine. Yeah. Now this is rendering in full res. So yeah, let's see. The basic idea behind this whole demo. Oh, remind me, by the way, if I forget to mention what the text says throughout the demo, I totally want to talk about that, but we'll get into it as we do this stuff. A couple things too that I want to. I know I'm jumping around here a lot, but I want to show you guys a couple work in progress as I go through this. I'll actually use that for kind of the guide of what I'm going to talk about. So this, as I did with Engage, I just started taking a lot of screenshots, and there were a couple reasons for this. One of them was, of course, that I wanted to... D Thunder, thanks for follow. Waldy, I'm happy you like the live show. Nice, Dark Green. There might be a bit too many colors, but it's fine. But yeah, so I took a ton of like work in progress shots. I mostly do this because I get excited and I want to share with the Logicoma group. I just post everything on our Slack. The other guys are probably pretty annoyed by that, but I don't know. I like it. So that was one reason. The other reason is that I got to sort of keep track of all the different shots I had played with, and seeing things progress. And so now the advantage is that I can look at this and we can kind of see what I made in a somewhat chronological order. So this was the first shot. This was, again, all I did is I just resurrected the Evoke Liveshow in the latest tool. So that was just showing that this was running, and that worked fine. Again, the live set stuff, just a quick overview before I dive into a bunch of this stuff. I have a MIDI controller here. This is actually wobbles. And if I hit these different pads here, it switches scenes. That's the idea there. It just uses the last MIDI note that comes from this controller to select the scene. So that's all this is. I wanted to go to that one, I think. And I have a couple things mapped here. So on this knob, I actually have like the focal distance for the depth of field. I don't know if you can really see that. This one is a time multiplier, so that can kind of shift everything around. There's the Logic Coma logo here. I have chromatic aberration. I have mirror X, mirror Y. These are on these sliders up here. This is desaturate. This one is actually supposed to be glitch, but because I just removed the upscale pass, that's actually where we do the glitch, so that doesn't show anything right now. And then exposure. And what's interesting about that is because I originally made these scenes in the live show project, I always had like time running like this, so I could kind of get an idea of the motion throughout the scene as well. And also sit here and play with these focus pulls. And I really liked really early on as I started making this, if I just kind of did some random pulls like this. So a lot of the shots in the demo end up doing that. And I just think that looks really cool. But it ended up being pretty nice. Emo screener lacks curl noise. I totally disagree. I like curl noise, but this demo did not need it. And it made everything nice and analytic. So it was actually really easy to sync to very accurately. So that's also pretty nice. But yeah, totally how I was making this is just writing the shaders. We have live reload on all this stuff. So if I go and change this shader, for example, which should be in revision live show assets blarticles, because this effect is called Paul blarticles, and I should be able to go to, I think this one's called text fuck up. And if I go in here and I don't know, change this, for example, to then everything gets taller. I can do this over here. So I was literally sitting doing this stuff for a week and just playing with things. Actually, that's kind of cool. I can look around in there. A comment says, I saw you put fingers on the screen. Yeah, I actually want to talk about that really quick. Jumping around a bit here. But I added something else here. So first of all, the fact that I can, click and drag here just moves around these mouse X and mouse Y variables, which in this case connected this to the scenes. Now, I knew I wanted to do that during the live set, but I didn't want to show my mouse cursor on the big screen. So I added this other thing, which is just like, I call it a mouse pad. And it's just an XY pad that also maps to the same thing. And because my laptop has a touch screen, this is actually what I was using to sync live, because all these things can be pulled out. So I can pull this onto one screen and then have everything else on the other screen. And then that's how I did the live set. But just wanted to show that because that's kind of cool. Simple hack, but it really worked out really well. Oh, that's cool, 286 Tech. Yeah, the synth is really the CPU heavy part, so that doesn't really surprise me. But anyway, back to these work in progress shots. So this was Saturday, and then on Sunday I started the particle system. So this is the very first shot of it. This is 100 by 100 by 100, and this of course was really fast because all these particles are tiny. There's no blending. Yeah, so this is how it started. And the way I do this, by the way, is really simple. You guys probably can't see it in the operator grid because it's going to be really small. By the way, the operators in this particular project, the grid is really big. And I really took advantage of, whoops, I didn't mean to dock that there. I really took advantage of the fact that I have a 4K screen here because I have down here, here's Elysian, the whole demo. Over here is Engage, again, the whole demo. Except I think I removed a bunch of scenes actually in both of these just because it's the live set project. And then up here should be Paul Blarticles. And this is where all the scenes are from the Iota demo. There's 8 here, and I think there were a couple more that I added, like the credits stuff was another one, but in the 64K, which got forked out of this, but not terribly important. But the idea here is that basically all they do is they set up a program to use, some vertex shader, and then the fragment shader is common between all these, and I'll get to some of that code as well. But then eventually it's going to call this draw thing, and this draw thing here just sets up blending, sets up passes camera shake and all those things to the shader, and also the resolution stuff that it needs to do to actually draw the particles. And then we just do a quad, and and we use instancing to just draw, however many of those quads that we actually need. And then in the shaders, so for example, again, this text one, we can take the GL instance ID and figure out where along this grid we're actually at. And from there, what we can do is we can change the position and the color of the particle. And then at the very end of the vertex shader, we call this blart function, which actually passes everything out to the, also the initial radius. And that passes everything out to the stuff that actually does the stuff. I know I'm jumping around here, but just to show you guys what that function actually looks like, it's really simple. We figure out the view position based on the world position. We apply camera shake after that in view space. Figure out the depth versus where our depth of field says it should be, and then expand the different vertices here. And then the fragment shader, all it does is just evaluate, well, first it does some early outs if it can, and then it will just evaluate this circle function and just draw that on the screen. And everything's additive blended, so you don't have to sort anything. So it becomes really trivial. Basically, that's how it works. The downside of this is because we're doing all the positioning of the particles in the vertex shader, we do this 4 to 6 times as much as we need to due to the way that things are expanded. And that 4 to 6 is, of course, depending on if the hardware has vertex caching or not. And that's bad. If we did this with compute, for example, we could reduce that by 4 at the cost of some bandwidth, which I don't think would be an issue in this case. So in the next thing I do with particles, I still want to do that. But yeah, this is totally all implicit in the vertex shader, Trevor. So each one of these, like this text fuck up one, it just includes this prologue here, which has this function, and then the stuff for the layouts and some of the common uniforms also has some helper functions and stuff. And then every shader itself looks like this, like it'll figure out where it is within its grid, set up its position, its initial radius, and then set up its color by applying a bunch of stuff and then just outputting. So pretty basic. So this was the very first shot, right? And so all this is doing is just positioning the particles within this grid. Very quickly after that, I started on this one. Now I'm actually just going to switch to this scene here. I'm actually going to hide the operators here because they're not that interesting. I think it's this scene here. Now there's a bit going on here with this flickering. But the idea here, yeah, it probably could have all come. I think the best would have been compute though. But I didn't have time to hack that into our engine, so we went with this. But yeah, so this is the original scene, and then I think what I want to do is actually break this down. Now, one of the things you might notice is that there's more particles here in this screenshot than there are here, and I think I mentioned that earlier, that I had to reduce the amount of particles to make it run fast on my laptop, and that's just fine. So let me remove a bunch of stuff, and then we'll talk about what's left. I'll get rid of some extra stuff here too. Whoops, this is the wrong shader. We need Raw Tech. It's called Raw Tech because I was inspired by this particular music video for the band Raw Tech. And I'm removing a bunch of other stuff too that I played with that we'll get to later. But let me just remove some of this stuff, and then we'll kind of build this back up and you can see how these are done. And when I show you this first one, the other stuff is going to become a lot more obvious. So I think we can start with that. There's still a bit of camera shake here, but I don't think it'll matter much. So this is the original scene. There's actually 2 layers of particles here, which it's probably really hard to see that on stream. There's also some extra post stuff going on. We're just going to have to ignore that. But there's 2 layers here. One of them is actually these kind of particles that are in the background. These larger ones just kind of make a grid. And that's just to fill things out a little bit. The important part is this stuff that's in the foreground. So initially we just have, let's do this. We just have particles in a grid. So this is if they were all white. And as you can see, I still have all this depth of field stuff on it. And all it's doing for the depth of field, by the way, is it just expands the radius and then evaluates a larger circle in the fragment shader. And that just kind of works out. It's not perfect in the way that it darkens as it evaluates a larger circle as well, which is kind of why you can see the plane where the focal distance is correct as much as you can. But I kind of fudged it, and it looks good enough. So we start with this grid. This isn't a full cube. It's just kind of a squatty cube. So we start with that, and then we start doing some interesting color stuff. So the first thing we do is I color this. Let me actually, we can even make this simpler, I think. We start by just coloring, like we took the white color there, and then we color it by some FBM stuff. So this gives us just a kind of noisier look. Yes, exactly, Alkama. Always saturate your paws. You see it here too. So yeah, this is just coloring the thing by FBM, and that's just to give it a little bit of texture to start out with. And this is literally like the order of stuff I played with to get to here. So we'll be here in a second. So I started with that, and then instead of just using one here, I actually do a mix between this blue color and this red color. So as they get higher, they become more red. Otherwise, they're more blue. And it just follows that ramp. And there's a bunch of particles above this as well that end up just being black for now. But we'll get to those later. So anyway, that's what I had, except I just had a few more particles. And that basically looked like this. Once you start applying the chromatic aberration, and I actually applied a lot of it at that point because I didn't think this was very interesting. So I applied extra while I was playing with it. And then you also do that kind of mirroring circle, which is something we had from Elysium, but I didn't use here. Then you get this first screenshot. Also, the color grading was different at this point. We went more with kind of a greenish, sort of late 1990s movie vibe green kind of thing in the demo, which I just think looks cool. But yeah, so they're a little different. But that's what we have here. Then this is the same thing, but I think I just did some mirroring on it, and it starts to look kind of neat. Again, more mirroring, more chromatic aberration, and you basically get the same thing. And some more playing with that. This is where things start to get a little more interesting. So I wanted to see, like, make this look a little more volumetric. So I think what I did here, actually I don't have that here. What if I did this? What happens? Yeah, something like that. So all I'm doing is I'm just running a sine wave through this now. And so it just lights up, parts of this. And I think I could lower the power here to make that look a little smoother. Yeah, so that was basically this. Running a sine wave and then just multiplying these. And so it starts to look really kind of volumetric now, and you can really see the depth of field. So things are starting to kind of come together there. Then this is where things get really interesting. I took out that thing that I just talked about. We'll get to that because I add it back later. And then I add this guy here. And this is where things start to look kind of cool, in my opinion. This is where we basically, okay, we actually might have an intro here. Or this is even worth displaying in the live show, rather. Green, no, this tool is not released. At some point, I'll release a source to it, but it's not going to be licensed. And I'm not going to do support on it. I'm just going to release it to share the code. But right now, it's private. Anyway. So what I have here is it's exactly that same grid. And I'm doing a couple things here. We'll start with just this. So what I do is exactly like we colored the particles with FBM before. I do the same thing, but I add this green color to all the particle colors. And I also scroll the FBM so it moves up. That's all that's happening here. But then what I do is I can take that same FBM and I can also add it to the Y position of the particle as it's scrolling up. And that was just something I tried with just to displace it a little bit. And it gets this really cool smoky look, right? And that's when I really liked this. Of course, it probably looked a little better when I had more particles. I think there's a little more glow and some more exposure here too. But I think you guys can more or less see what's going on. FBM is fractal Brownian motion. It's a really fancy way to say it's 3D noise. I don't think those two things are entirely equivalent, but I don't remember exactly what the difference is off the top of my head. But the point is, it's just a 3D noise function. So it's light in some places and dark in some other places. And it's just, yeah, basically looks smoky. So that's when things started to look kind of cool. Then we get to this. I'll get there in a sec. I'm going to do a couple more things to this. Just add a couple more things back here. So I'll turn down that exposure again. So the next thing I add here is there's this crazy disp is what I call this. And if I add that, you'll see there's a bunch more red stuff here. Now it's a bit hard to see what's going on here, and maybe I'll talk a bit more about that in the next one, but it just displaces the particles a little bit more based on another FBM kind of thing. And then I have these flashy flashy slices, which again is this thing. The reason these are flickery, by the way, is just because I have a really high power. So it's basically this sine wave basically saturates or aliases rather with the 3D grid. And then you get that kind of flickering. And I just liked how that looked when everything was like this. And then the last thing is this explosion thing. And I don't think I used this anywhere in the live set. Explode effect is explode amount. So if we make this 1, then everything kind of goes nuts. And what this actually is in the demo, there's this part where the music just kind of goes and then everything explodes. And that's what this is doing. So I don't think this was actually used in the live set project. It only came back when I sort of backported the effects. So there's just a little bit of it. And we can kind of turn this up. And go really crazy. Just kind of explodes out the middle. Pretty nuts. And yeah, the encoder really hates this, I'm sure. But those are kind of all the different things in this particular scene. But I want to get to this because this gets kind of interesting. So this is called Snek. And that's here. So interestingly enough, this is actually almost exactly the same things. So if I go into the Snek shader, where is it? There's actually 2 parts. There's Snek inner and Snek outer. Let me show you the difference here. So Snek has 2 parts. I know that this stream is going to be as scatterbrained as my other one, so bear with me here. Whoops, that was... What is that? Oh, that's the floaters. Yeah, so there's actually 3 parts. There's floaters, which you can't really see anyway. There's an outer and an inner. So here's the inner part, which is the main thing. And here's the outer part. Just a bit harder to see. I can get the depth of field on it. But this is just to fill space. Just this kind of grid-looking thing. I'm not going to talk about that too much. The inner stuff. So if I pull up this shader here, Snek inner, it's basically the same stuff. If I remove these flashy slices, we just have this. That was the blue things. And I'll remove these orange things too. I'm going to add them back in a minute. Then we have this kind of volumetric tube looking thing. And look what happens if I remove this chunk of code. Then this looks familiar, doesn't it? Right? So I basically took this thing here, once we have this cloudy stuff, and I just polar map it. So I just take the same grid and I map it around a cylinder. And that's just this. That's all that is. And now it's a bit easier to see what this crazy distortion stuff is. So I mentioned the red stuff. If I comment that out again, you'll see this stuff kind of goes away. It becomes a regular tube. And if I comment that back in, you get this nice sort of red movie stuff. So what this is actually doing is it takes that noise function, which is like a scalar field, and it takes the derivative of that, which gives you a vector field. And with that vector field, we can take the magnitude of that and color the particles red by it, and then we can take the direction of that and then distort the particle positions with that. And that gives us this like explodey kind of effect with, at some places. And it kind of scrolls just because I add Z to that, I think. Now it's all the way over there because our time reset. But that's basically that. And then as the smoke would kind of move things up and down in the previous version of this, now it kind of moves radially, so it looks like something different, which is kind of cool. And then if I remove the polar mapping again, I want to show you some other things here. Because if we take a look at this again from this angle, we can add the flashy stuff again, and then we have these blue lines again. You'll notice, by the way, this cube is a little shorter, and I think it's a little more dense. What's that? Amblin2K, if I'm reading that correctly. Thanks for the follow. Thanks for follow either way, but yeah. But yeah, this grid has a little bit different proportions just because it's going to be mapped to the cylinder. But yeah, so here we have this thing again, and then if I add back this orange part here, we also have these orange slices going the other way, like on the other axis. And those two things, again, when we polar map, become the different parts of the Snek. And that's all that scene is. So at that point, I think I took a bunch of screenshots of this because this was without the crazy distortion. This was with the distortion. Again, more particles here than what ended up in the actual intro. And that's just how it is. And then here I'm starting to play with like the mirroring and stuff on it, different exposure. I think this shot actually made it into the demo in some form or another. Different shots. It's all the same stuff, just playing with mirroring and all that. And this, I'll get to this scene. This is this scene. Now this one, the encoder I know is going nuts over. I know it's not going to like this, so I'm just going to show screenshots here. This again is basically I just took a grid and polar mapped it. Mapped it around a sphere. And then I increased the resolution and added these different components. I really didn't like these colors after a while, so I made them way more ugly. And then eventually I kind of fixed those, but then there's a lot of playing around with that. More playing around with this one. I think this is when I added the outer parts of the Snek. And here I just took a screenshot of the Paul Blarticles node in our operator in our graph. And I think I posted that to Poet and all on Twitter. Because we knew we'd kind of have an intro at that point. T. Sumerlin. Yeah, all this is just an elaborate scheme to make my face look glitchy. What next here? Really? I zoomed and now I can't go to the next one? Okay. Again, more just playing around with camera angles for this stuff. This scene doesn't exist anymore. It was another thing I started with, which I called Dance Floor at the time. I think there is another scene called Dance Floor now, but it's not this. And this was a bunch of neon stuff and playing with a height map, and it just didn't work out. And I also had a bunch of shader bugs with it where the depth of field stuff actually didn't work. I don't think that's in any of the screenshots though. Some of these kind of look cool, but yeah, it wasn't feeling right to me, so we never used this. But what did come out of this is that I started doing another height map. And this is literally just a height map, except I saturate. This is like you take a grid and then of just one high, but like a really wide grid. And then you distort it by the FBM stuff. And then you saturate the FBM. So you get these kind of top peaks here, which I really like. And that became this, which we call Brain. That's this one. No, where is it? This one. This is the Brain. And it's, again, just more polar mapping. And it's basically that grid, except I changed that crazy distortion stuff that I showed in the other ones. I made it purple. And then I also added this sort of blue line that goes through the height, which is how you get these different kind of sparkles. And then it becomes all blue, which is kind of cool. This I really like with mirroring, and that's what this is. Mirroring and some chromatic aberration and the right timing with it. And then that's when I added the purple. So really kind of blown out. I think this is pretty ugly, but at the same time I like it. Something like that. And again, with more particles, it was a bit prettier. But, you know, that's how it goes. More playing with this scene. This is just one particular shot of that. This one did make it in the demo. More shots of this. This one I couldn't really recreate exactly, which is annoying. And same with this one. Just could never get those shots to work again. This, by the way, is the same stuff, except I think I did this thing where I clamp the UV coordinates, so it just stretches the ends of that. And then this is when I kind of reordered some post passes just to smooth things out. Looks a little bit better. And this made it into the demo as well. Yeah, exactly, G Superland. It's exactly like one of those. This, by the way, so the reason this one came about, and I'll talk about this, it's this scene here. And the reason this came about is because this is when I started trying to do, like, I took that height map and I started displacing it with text. So let me actually show you this. I'm just going to edit this shader down here, and because you don't really need to see it, I can just show you what I'm doing. Let's see. What should I remove here? Let's remove this. And then I'll turn some of this down here. remove that thing that goes through, and then we'll remove the text stuff. So I think if we start with this, we just have some particles. It looks like there's a bit of distortion here. I don't know where that's coming from. There's definitely a bit of distortion here. I wonder if yeah, so I still have the crazy distortion here, but I think I just turned that way down. So we start initially with just a grid. And then there's some of this stuff. I don't know if this was inspired by Prometheus directly, Evil. It may have been. I mean, it's inspired by sci-fi for sure. So maybe, but not explicitly, I think. But yeah, so we have that. We also have, there's this slice thing that goes through here, which is green. Maybe we'll see that. There it is. And that just goes through the height map like that. So that's really trivial. And then we have the text. Now the text is kind of interesting. So let's just add the text, but I'm going to turn it way down. So first I'll just add the color. And here we see some of the text. Now there's two things this says. This says kokeilu, I think is how you say that. And that's Finnish for experiment. And that's just something I threw in there. And then these kanji characters here actually say defect. I don't actually know what the word is in Japanese. I use Google Translate. So maybe it's wrong anyway. But the idea is I was just kind of playing with things. The working title of this, by the way, was defect. Well, first it was Paul Blarticles, but became defect and then became Iota. But yeah, so I just added some of that stuff there. And so that's just if you add the color, and then you can displace everything as well, which if you do just a little bit of, looks something like this. And I also had it inverted. It's actually wrong because it should have been 1.0 minus text to do this. And then you can see this thing's being distorted. And then if you just turn that way up, then you're kind of swimming in this sea of particles. And you can't really tell it's text. I mean, if you're looking, you probably can, but it's just kind of displacement stuff. Now, the reason why we have a bunch of these particles that are just kind of floating sort of halfway between the two planes, that's actually because the main reason is that the text, when it's drawn to a texture, which is how we read it in here, is anti-aliased. And so the lines in between here is actually what you get just if you use those as heights as well. It looks really bad if you want to display this as text, but I just liked how it looked kind of swimming through this. So I thought that was pretty cool. If we use a step function here, then we get all up or down, but none of the stuff in between. So I just kind of liked how that looked. Especially with the depth of field going through this. And then, of course, we have some additional offset stuff as well, which if I take away the text again, you'll see that that's just this height map here. And it kind of moves around due to me adding some time to the FBM position. So all of that, when added together, gives this whole thing. And that's, I think, the opening scene in the demo because it just looks really nice when it's really slow. The camera kind of moves really slowly through it. So that was that, and I realized that was going to happen. Then we started getting into the actual text, which ended up being this. And we'll talk. I'll actually just show you guys the different layers here. So if we go back to text, I'm just going to remove stuff again. Here you can see we actually use that step function again. I'm going to remove some other stuff first. Here, yeah. So here it's just scrolling the text, and it's literally just scrolling the position. So this is just a 2D plane. If I remove the text stuff as well, it's just a plane of particles. It's fairly dense, and then we can add the color from the text, and this is the text with a step function. So I'll remove that actually. So we add the color of the text to the particles. And then we add the position, or we add the color of the text to the positions as well, and it lifts them up like this. And here you really see the anti-aliasing going kind of haywire. It's really flickery because it's just scrolling the texture, and the texture is pretty high res, so you're going to see a lot of flicker here. But you see a lot of those sort of in-between stages, and that's why here I just apply the step function after reading the texture as well, which can give a kind of alias look in some places, but it doesn't really matter. And the depth of field works really well in this, which is kind of nice. So that's pretty cool. The text here again, here's defect, and then period, and then logicoma. So that's all that is. And then here we also add that soft offset stuff. Like that. And this again is just that height map stuff. So it's basically the same as that other thing, except, you know, kind of squashed into just a strip. And I did that so that we can use a lot higher res to display the text more clearly. I don't ever think I put the Iota text in here. I think I just really liked it as it was with Logicoma. So again, just basic height map stuff. And then, first of all, I like this with the mirroring, just to point that out. And then this is where it kind of got really cool, is I just started playing with more stuff, and this flickering I really like. So all that's happening here, let me remove the time offset here. All that's happening here is, again, it's that same height map, but then I take another FBM thing where I just take the position, I multiply it by like 100, or probably like 30. What is it here in the code? 60. And then I floor that so it rounds, you know, to the nearest integer. And then I put that into the FBM function. And that's what kind of quantizes it and gives it this really pixelated look. And I really like how a lot of that stuff is. Additionally, before I do the floor of that, I add time. And that's what kind of gives it this really clicky look as time sort of goes through these integers. And that's all that is. So I think we had a couple shots of that in the demo as well. So yeah, so that was me playing with that. And again, you can see here, before this was anti-aliased. I think I had a huge resolution on this before I moved it over to the laptop. This was actually where, because originally I was, you know, putting Logicoma and stuff in here, and this is where I actually just figured out that we could actually draw these katakana symbols. I hadn't realized that we could actually do that with our text system before, but because we support wide charts, this actually just worked. So I was pretty happy about that. So I used that later in the demo, and I think this was the final text, except defect, which I added here. So here you can see everything, which is exactly what we have here, except with a little bit of chromatic aberration. So that's pretty cool. And you can see here, even as I'm showing this and I'm sitting here just moving on the MIDI controller, that actually got really nice with the workflow. So I was actually really happy to do that with this sort of live feedback. Definitely going to continue that in the future. Yeah, playing with mirroring on that. Again, went back to this scene, just made it really tall just to see what it would look like. It was kind of cool, but I don't think I used that for anything. This is the light ray scene. This is, I think, the only scene that I'm kind of disappointed with in the final demo. So in the Liveshow project, it looks like this, and it's really flickery. Let me turn off the flicker. The flicker's there for good reason. I think it looks really nice. But we got to turn it off to show you guys this stuff. Here's my flicker. That should turn that off. And I'm also going to move the depth of field. And I'm going to not move this. And I'm going to turn off the text glitch, which I think I have in here. Glitches the position a bit, like that. There. So the idea here, it's that same kind of grid. No, Chalkwell Trevor, you can't do that. You can't push the camera position to Rocket. And it's kind of annoying because the way Rocket works, it kind of has a global time, and basically I'm not convinced that there's a good workflow to use the Rocket tracks for live show stuff. That's actually one of the reasons I want a new sequencer as well. So yeah, they're pretty disconnected. I only use the mouse cameras or just hack in some sinus cameras in the case of some of the older scenes, like this one. And that works well enough for the live stuff because you can adjust the time multiplier, and that's how you can kind of jump around between shots, even though it's just jumping around between different points of that same sinus. That's a really good trick if you're doing 4Ks, by the way. But yeah, those aren't connected. But yeah, all this is it's again that same grid, but then we just take the X and Y position and look up some of the text stuff. As you can see here, due to the particles being a lot more dense, it looks a bit better here. And I had to really cut that down when we went over to the laptop. And that's basically that. It's using a bit of a different color because we ended up using actually both of these colors in the demo, this red and then this bluer color. And I think I have this cutouts thing, which just displays, different cutouts of the text that was there. I also add a bit of glitch to the position before I look up the textures for the, for the text. And the text is just 4 symbols, la, ji, ko, and ma. And for that, I just cycle between them. And then you get this. And that looks okay. I kind of wanted to do more with this, but it was actually really hard. Like I did actually have a Logicoma logo in here at one point, and it just looked really bad. So I took that out. But yeah, a lot of playing around with that scene. So I may actually make this brighter if we do a final. I'm probably not going to bump up the particles because I mean, even though we had to drop it a lot, I'm still pretty happy with the performance. So probably going to keep it as is and just keep these shots for the next one. Camera splines is yeah, let's not talk about that now. Yeah, again, just more testing with the red, testing with some of the glitch here as well. And then a lot more testing with more of these shots. I think here I went back to this ball scene and changed all the colors. These are the colors that are in the final. I just took out a lot of the colors just so it kind of fit a little bit better. I went back to a height map. And this is where things get kind of cool with this. Which one? Where is it? This scene here. There. This one's a tough one because this one I think really looks worse in the Liveshow project and in the final demo than it did in my screenshots. So be prepared for some cool ones. But I basically took a height map and I mapped that to a sphere again, just like I did with this one. But then instead of making the height map stuff go outwards from the center of from the origin, I actually made them go inwards. And it made this. And because I didn't actually just take one layer of a height map, I actually took like several layers of a height map, I think like 5 or 10 or something. And then all those had this height map that got added and saturated. You get a lot of these like layers here that I think looked really cool. And then once I increased the particles and stuff and kind of brought that effect out, I also added this orange slice thing again from the Snek. Played around with that more, and then I added more layers, and we got this really cool dense-looking thing. And then I added back the displacement stuff, and that's how you get the red here. And then really started to bring this out as well, and got some really cool shots out of this. So I think this is a bit more stunning than it is in the actual demo, but I'm still pretty happy with how we were able to make it look. So maybe in a future demo, where I'm really targeting only these really high-end GPUs, you'll see some more of this stuff, but... And I think that's the last screenshot that I made before we left for the party. At that point, we started taking all these work in progress shots and kind of laying them out on a timeline and figuring out how that was going to work. I do have a couple videos here that are also just in this work in progress folder. So this scene that I mentioned earlier, this is what it looks like. You're seeing a re-encoded version of this, so it's going to look like ass, but yeah, it's also a low bitrate recording that I just used to send the guys kind of what this would look like. But yeah, I think this scene's actually super ugly. And then, what's next? No, I want to go to the next video, please. Software, man. And there's this one, which is also a shot in the demo, or something like it was at least. This again, just showing the flickery light shafts going through stuff. Again, I think this looks better with more particles, but I'm probably not going to change that for the final release just because it was so fast on my laptop. Although now that I'm at home, that wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, kind of feel like what we released at the party is what should stay in the demo, minus maybe making a couple of these things a little brighter. And I think it seems to, I think I mentioned this earlier, but the intro does also crash, or it doesn't really crash. It just hangs during loading on my work machine. I would really like to debug that after work tomorrow. So we'll probably just do minor things for if we do a final. We'll see. But that's really actually kind of all I got now that I went through all this. Again, we did this really quickly, so there isn't as much stuff as there would have been in some other intros we've done. But I think it was really fun because it was super chill working on this for that week. Even at the party, like we were pretty busy on Friday and we were pretty busy Thursday before the party, and that was kind of it. Like it was actually pretty good. I do actually want to pull up the other project though, because I want to talk a little bit more about the sync in this one. Evil says, do you plan to release another 64K assembly? At this point, we don't. I mean, we'll see if something happens, but at this point, we're not planning on that. Like, it really depends on a lot of things, and I've got a lot of other stuff than the demo scene going on in my life right now that I kind of got to get on top of. So we'll see. Dark Second, how's the instancing done? It's literally just GL draw elements instance, and then you just specify the instance count. And then in the shader, we use the instance ID to identify which particle we're actually moving around. Virtual Zavi, how's it going? Nice to see you at the party as well. Oh yeah, I forgot assembly is the same time as Datastorm. I'm most likely going to Datastorm. I haven't ordered my ticket yet because I don't think they're on sale yet, but probably doing that. Drew2 says, can you talk about what it was like doing the shader compo? Was it hard or nerve-wracking? It's one of those things that I've done a lot of at Solskogen, so I'm actually pretty used to it now, and I've done a bunch on stream too. What ends up happening is I never prepare for that until about an hour before. And there's a couple reasons why. A lot of that's laziness, and a lot of that's just like I kind of winging it in that compo because I like sitting there in that environment with the DJ playing the music and just kind of seeing what comes out and sometimes trying some new ideas. So that's kind of what that compo is for me. So I don't do anything before. Sometimes I'll play with some ideas though, but it's pretty rare. And I did actually try to prepare some ideas for this one, but only a couple. Like after work, a couple days, I just sat down and did some stuff, but it wasn't very good. So I didn't memorize anything. But about an hour before that, so I only participated in the first round. I later came back for commentating, but that was a pretty different experience. I think I commentated on the finals, but there was a qualifier, a semifinal, and a final. So in the qualifier, there were 4 groups of 2 people, and I was on the 3rd group against again Provad. And so about an hour before that, like I was watching the other competitors for the first 2 rounds. That was that hour before that. And I was kind of looking at what they were doing and just kind of thinking about what I could do. What I ended up doing was this bit pattern stuff. And I actually sat down while watching the other competitors and just kind of coded up just some random bit pattern stuff. And I did that a couple times to make sure that if I did kind of random stuff, it would work out relatively well. And it did. And as I was playing with those bit patterns, I got these bit patterns kind of moving around the screen. Again, this was just at my desk testing. And then I think it was, or not I think it was, I know it was Polynomial or Graham Sutherland, who I think, or G. Superland here, I think he left or said he was leaving. Maybe that was someone else. Anyway, in the chat here, he said, it's not logic coma unless you have a bunch of chromatic aberration. And then I thought, oh, hey, I could do a radial blur on this. I didn't want to do chromatic aberration because our chromab actually has a specific curve. You can find it on my shader toy. That makes it sort of conserve energy and make it a bit nicer. Maybe conserve energy isn't the right term for that, but yeah, it makes the ramp so it doesn't color the image. But I didn't want to memorize the math for that, so I just did it as a radial blur instead. So I just took the per pixel function or the per pixel math and I stuffed it in a function. I call that 100 times or something with slightly different UVs on the input, and then you get a radial blur. And then I think in the actual compo, I colored that by taking some colors from the textures that were provided. And then I added some mirroring and some displacement stuff because I actually finished making what I wanted to make about halfway through the round. And I think this is one of the reasons I lost, but I kind of didn't have many ideas about where to go from there at the time. I was having a great time, so it's not like I'm sour about it or anything, but yeah, I didn't really progress after that, after I had kind of made the whole idea. So that's what that was like for me. I don't think the way it's used is on Shader Toy, but the ramp function that we use is. So the way the coloring works is, and then I think the rest of it is just applying that with, how you adjust the actual UVs. And I do like 100 samples or something because it ends up being fast. And the UVs are basically based on the distance from the center as well. So there's kind of a nonlinear curve. But with that knowledge and then what you find on Shader Toy, you should be able to recreate what we do. I don't know. It's kind of funny that that's a signature move. but whatever. So that was really that whole experience. It wasn't something that I was super nervous about because like I had done it before. I mean, of course, when you're sitting there and the compos are starting, you know, your heart gets pumping a bit and it gets really exciting, but it wasn't in like a oh shit way. It was more like, oh, this is getting a cool way. I think I'll also be doing it at Solskogen this year. It depends because like with revision as well, or with revision this year, they had so many people that wanted to do it that we had to like apply for it. And then we got selected. And I think I found out a few days before that I would be part of that. Maybe a week before. I can't remember when that was. And yeah, I was lucky enough to be able to compete is what I'm trying to say. So I don't want to say that I'm totally doing it at Solskogen because I don't know. I don't know if they'll have to do the same thing, but I will try to do it at Solskogen because I really like this compo anyway. It's really fun. Yeah. I like that you call me that, Drew, too, but I'm just gonna pretend that's true. I kind of wanted to talk about the editing here. I've stopped calling it sync and I started calling it editing as more of a mental thing because I have an inferiority complex with motion graphics. But I watch a lot of motion graphic stuff, and especially for editing. Like, it's really common that I'll look at like 3 videos for like inspiration for content, and then another video for inspiration for colors, and then another video for inspiration for editing. And in particular, I was watching this one video with a lot of really fast cuts, and I kind of wanted to do that here with some of the sync as well. And there's some of this stuff that I think turned out really nice. Even though the sync is really simple, it's one of those things where you kind of lay down something and you do just like hard edits on some of the track values and then just kind of adjust it until the timing feels right. It actually takes a while to do. Like, to give you an idea of the timeline for this project, I think I mentioned that when we left early Thursday morning, we had all the scenes in place except the credits and the greetings at the very end, which is way down here. Not way down here. It's not that long. We had everything except this, and we didn't even know where they were gonna be on the timeline. So we started laying all that out. Actually, I need to get that picture from Wobble because we did it on his laptop and we just laid it out in Photoshop. It would be kind of cool to save that, but I don't have it here. Anyway, we kind of laid all that out before we went to Rocket as well because it's kind of annoying to move scenes around in Rocket. And then we laid all this out on Thursday night and then just started doing a little bit of edits. So we had all the scenes on the timeline except this one on Thursday evening, right? So Friday, we worked during the day a lot on the track music stuff, but there were a few hours during the day before that and several hours to about 4 a.m. after that that we worked on. So it's about, I would say, around 12 hours or so, maybe somewhere, but maybe more like 10. But 10 hours just doing editing, which compared to the week-long project, that's actually pretty significant. And a lot of that is just laying out stuff like where I want glitches and all that stuff. Like, I'm not just talking about where the scene cuts are when I mean that. I'm talking about where all the smaller edits are. So, for example, a really good example is in this scene. Things fade up. And then we have this cut here with the edits. Some more stuff. And then I think there's some additions there right before it goes to the other thing. And all that's happening here in this small cut, this isn't that significant, but we have one camera shot here. And then here, I turn on the glitch stuff for a little bit. And then while the glitch is on, we change camera angles once and then twice, or actually once. And then we turn off the glitch. And then we move the camera again out. And then the glitch comes back for a little bit. And it's a simple edit, but it's that kind of stuff that I actually spend a fair amount of time on. Like, I basically go over the demo several times, like over and over again, front to back, just doing all these small edits. And I spent particular amount of time on these ones earlier on, and also where I wanted the logo and stuff. The music comes in with just a pad, so I didn't want to fade in. I just wanted to be there, just like the pad does. And there's some more edits here with like the glitches and the depth of field and how it kind of moves through your eye that I spent more time on than I would like, but I think they went pretty well. Like the logo flashes in here a tiny bit at one point, barely even see it. And then here things start to flicker in a little more with the glitch, and then they turn off again. So that just looks like that. Cuts a couple more times, and then it glitches out like this, and then some more glitch. Just these tiny little things, and over again, they really add a lot to the thing as a whole. Flashes a couple more times, the glitch comes in more, and then we flash the next thing. And here the chromatic aberrations turn up way too high because it gives a radial blur effect, especially when it's desaturated, which I think it is a little bit here. And then here this was kind of cool. This kind of happened on accident, but I ran with it. We have these sort of spikes here, and I turn this way down, and then I fade the logo in because these kind of guide your eye to the center of the screen. And then the text fades in. And as it fades in, we do a couple things like we invert the texture here. And just going to go through this slowly because it's kind of cool. And then do some more glitch with inverting it as well. And at the same time, the focus is actually pulling sort of through the thing. So you get this pull through the particles here, which I just think looks really cool and kind of, to me, feels like it draws more attention to the text as well. And then there's some more glitches, and then it flashes this Japanese text, which is Iota. Iota. So Iota here. And then it flashes that a couple times. And I think it flashes those inverted as well. And I actually had this I spent way more time on than a lot of the other edits. Like I had several different versions of this, and I just kept adjusting things until it felt right. To be honest, I feel like I have an eye for this stuff over time, but the way I do it is I just try stuff and sit there until it works. And then some more glitch. And then I fade out the logo again as these spikes start coming in again. Except I glitch it back a couple times just because it looks cool. But yeah, so all that kind of fits together into one, what I think is a decent shot. And then it fades out, and then we get the boo with the text here as we fade, and then there's more editing. So there's a lot of that stuff throughout the demo, and it's interesting because like Zavi here says, it's more editing than I had realized, and that's kind of generally how it is with a lot of our demos, because I don't really do the most technical effects. I just, like I said, I watch a lot of motion graphics and I want to get that vibe. And it really makes a difference though. I found, at least in the demos that I've done, that people like the ones that I spend this time on more than the ones that I don't, even if they don't realize that a lot of this stuff is going on. And that's kind of how it is. And when I'm just sitting here, like even when this scene comes in, for example, there's a tiny bit of flash. So like this is brighter than this if you just look at the background. And so there's a lot of those flashes and stuff too. And then we do a hard cut in here. A lot of the times there's kick drums as well, where I make things darker, which I do a lot through this demo. Let's see if I find that case here. Like here. Boom, boom. And this gets a little darker. This also is really cool because you have this really clicky scene that goes with the music. And that was another thing too, is that as I was doing some of these edits, Wobble was like taking videos of this and bringing out things in the music as well to kind of match each other. So it was pretty synergistic in that sense. Yeah, that's very true also, Drew, is that a lot of this is possible because I have, first of all, we have this tool which allowed us to build a lot of this pretty quickly, but also a lot of this editing work is fairly quick with Rocket by now. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but we did a bunch of demos under the group name Nazareth where we would just show up to a party without like anything and just build something really fast. And those, even though those demos weren't like terribly good, it was actually an awesome experience for me to do that several times because you get just really efficient with some of these tools. And the way that I use Rocket is just really, really fast nowadays. So I'm actually kind of worried about replacing it because we'll have to kind of match that. But yeah, there's all kinds of those little editing things throughout here when the mirroring turns on and off. I really like this edit here, even though the encoder won't. I think that's so cool. How it just explodes like that. I'm going to replace Rocket because I would like to try editing with a more like Adobe Premiere video editing kind of style editor for doing sync. Because as I was sitting here working on the different scenes, I would like to be able to just like make a camera path there and just put that away as a shot, and then later bring in a bunch of those, and then start to be able to move things around. So there's more kind of that style of editing that I want to play with and experiment with that isn't that conducive in Rocket. Like in Rocket, it's really annoying to reorder scenes, which is actually why we sat down and did the storyboard thing before moving to Rocket. It would be nice to not have to do that. I mean, maybe that's a good workflow anyway, so we might try that in the future, but the reason we did that is so that I could do that first and then lay everything out in Rocket, because it was a lot easier to execute in Rocket once we knew what we were doing. But I need kind of a better experimental workflow. Yeah, thanks, Trevor. Yeah, again, the whole thing is I just sit here for hours and just kind of it's almost really discouraging while doing it, because there's a lot of these things that people won't notice, but at the same time, like I just sit here and watch the demo over and over again, just sit there, and it really makes a difference overall. Yeah, Metal Voids, you could write a custom Rocket editor, but it wouldn't be the same. I would ideally like to change the data model on a more fundamental level, and that's just not something you're going to get with a custom Rocket editor. There are some issues with Rocket as well, with like interpolating two values, which I don't want to get into that right now, but yeah, a lot more edits like here, where like there's this little edit where the music goes, and I think I just like go hard on the glitch for a very split second, and then with other stuff. So I realize I should have been showing Rocket here as I'm looking through a lot of this stuff. Just do that. Here you're only seeing the post-process stuff. The effect-specific stuff is all in their own little things here, and including cameras, actually. But yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it, Zavi. A lot of this stuff is people won't notice it, but they know that they will like it better. And I know that that's the case because that's the case with me. And as I said earlier, it seems that people like these demos more than they like the demos before I would do this stuff. even this too. It's like the fact that when the text comes out at one point, it just glitches out a little bit. It's just I just sat there and played with it, and that's where it felt right. They're more playing around with that stuff in the audio. I think it's, if we go over here, I can hide Snek. And then I had Creds and Greets. So when this happens, I make them a lot brighter. And they get darker again. It just matches the music. A lot of that kind of stuff. The sound is not going when I'm doing when I'm just scrolling through a lot of this faster. If I play it, it's on. So I mean, this demo, I especially felt that this kind of editing was important in this demo just because we didn't spend as much time on the content by far. So it made sense to at least do what we could within the time we had. With this kind of editing, because it really doesn't take that long. Like I mentioned, that this was kind of about 10 hours during that process, which in a demo like Engage, also there's a ton of these edits, probably about twice as much as this. But in that case, it's like 20 hours over the span of 6 weeks, which then it's actually pretty efficient. So I'm kind of used to spending the last days on that stuff anyway. And a lot of this, like, there's from what I know, there's no science to this. You just have to sit there and play with those over and over again until it gets to stuff you like. But I don't know. I kind of enjoy doing that too, because it's really where a demo like this especially goes from, okay, it's just a random collection of scenes, to something that I actually enjoy watching. Like, it really goes between that, like, okay, this, yeah, like I said, this is just a collection of scenes, from that to something where it's like, okay, this is actually working for me. So it's effort that really pays off, I think. And if nothing else, I'm really satisfied with this demo for how long we spent on it. And I think 4th place in the 64K compo was pretty well deserved. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this. And generally, I think it worked pretty okay for live set visuals. I think that a lot of these scenes, because they were so much slower, maybe weren't the best. But the nice thing is that with the live show set, I'm actually just going to keep, like I did with this one, I just started making scenes within that project, and then that became an intro. That's kind of how I plan to work for the next couple ones as well, I think. I think it was NTSC. Maybe no, not NTSC. One of the Cocoon guys. I remember his name, but I don't remember his handle. But he was mentioning that that some of the visuals in the live show lacked a little bit of variety, and that's totally because like, I'm only taking this from stuff we've done demos with. So there's only, I think, shots from 3 demos here. So I figure as we do more and more of these, then I'll just have more variety. So I'll just worry about it then. If nothing else, at least the demos that were in the set are pretty varied. That's Elysian and Engage, and then this one. We have a bit of a bigger pool than that to take from, but not that was made in this tool, so we'll get to that. Anyway, I think that's about it for me for what I wanted to go over on the demo. If you guys want to see any more code or have any questions or any of that, I'll just say fire away. And I can answer those here. Also, I don't think I mentioned the music much, but Wobble did a really great job on this, and of course Hoffman as well. The only part I played in this musically is a little bit of direction, just because I kind of knew, since I was sitting here with the visuals and had music playing all the time, I kind of knew which tracks would work well with this, so I gave a bit of direction. But also, one of the cool things about the way we do music in Logic Coma is we post a lot of music tracks that we send to each other and stuff, just kind of throughout the year. And so I actually have like some sound design stuff that's in basically all of our tracks, but the real credit goes to whoever actually did the music that could actually turn that into something listenable and put that in a context that actually makes sense. Whereas I usually just do a lot of loops or play with some crazy alien sounds or whatever. So do you see, random question, will your set be uploaded to the Revision YouTube channel? I think it will be. I don't actually know. I'm hoping it will be, and if not, I really want to get a hold of it myself because I really want that for safekeeping. But I don't know how the music copyright stuff works for that, so I don't know. But I think Havoc's told me that that would be uploaded, so hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm actually going to go to the Twitch stream and watch that after this because I haven't seen it. I've only seen bits of it as they, or from different people as they come up on Facebook and Twitter. I'm really glad you guys like the set. That was so much fun for us to do. Like all the stuff I've gone over here was just like the technical stuff, but when you get up on the stage and then you have the music and everything, it becomes really organic and it's just super fun. So that was an awesome experience, and I'm really glad that was received so well. Zakwa, are we still in the Space Pigs demo? God, I hope not. I did like some of those, some of that demo for sure. But those aren't my favorite things, to be honest. Yeah, exactly. As Hoffman says, we should definitely get that on Mixcloud. There was a lot more original stuff in that set than I think people realize, actually. I think we played like 4 different Wavesaber songs, at least 2, and then a bunch of stuff from like my old EP, a couple originals from Martin as well. In fact, I don't know if you guys remember, but the last tracks, so we actually ended with Bulls on Parade by Rage Against the Machine, which is awesome. But the song we played before that is actually a VIP, an M Machine bootleg that I did like 3 years ago, and then in the last couple months, Wobble and I kind of resurrected that and bumped it up to 175 and made it nuts. And I'm really glad that we got to play that too. And then there was a bunch of commercial stuff too to make it a proper set. So I'm really happy with that in that sense too, that there was a lot of original stuff there. It wasn't just all commercial stuff. So it was really cool. I'm just so satisfied with all of this, to be honest. So it was really cool that we could prepare for that set, and then it also became an intro. And then we also had a great weekend because the party was awesome. And I also got to participate in live coding. It's just really, really cool. And we also got stuff like this. It's just really nuts. Oh, and one super duper awesome thing that I forgot to mention completely is we totally, I can't believe I forgot to mention this. I know why. It's because I don't have the trophy here. This is our Meteoric that we got last year because we won Best Music for the Music in Elysian. And technically, Hoffman won this because he did the music. But because he had already had one of these, he gave this to me because at that point I had done the synth. Now a lot of the synth is Hoffman's as well. But that meant both of us had one. We won the Meteoric for Best 64K last year with Engage. So super stoked about that as well. Thanks, Mom. Bomba, is that how you say that? I'm not sure. Anyway. So yeah, super happy about winning that 64K thing. I also have the certificate, but it's in my laptop bag at work, so I couldn't show that as well. But we won that, so I was just really, really stoked about that. And of course, we sent that home with Wobble. So now all of us have one except Darth Shader, so we got to win another one. But yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, the Wave Saber tunes at least stand up in loudness against some of the commercial tracks. But yeah, that set was really, really cool. So I'm just so pleased, and I'm honestly still on a high about the whole thing. It was a great party, and just so many awesome things happened. And again, I'm totally skimming over the tracked music thing because I want to talk about that on Sunday, but that was also awesome. Which again, a reminder, if you guys want to hear more about our tracked music entry, which won the compo there, tune in at my normal time slot on Sunday. So that'll be 8 p.m. or 20 o'clock CEST due to the recent time change. And then Hoffman's going to come on and talk a bunch more about that stuff. And that'll be really cool. Also, at some point, I want to start having, because like the last Demo Scene stream was when CBDT of Monad came on and started talking about his stuff. I would love to do that more. So if you guys want to talk about any of your stuff, any Demo Scene related things, or know any guys that might want to, hit me up. I don't want to say, I know I have someone else lined up as well, and I don't want to say because we didn't talk about making that public yet, but I already got another one of those lined up, so I'll let you guys know as soon as we sort of hammer out the details there, and that's going to be really cool. So, and especially on like the tails of releasing a production, it's really nice to do this because it's nice for whoever does this, like speaking from my own experience here, it's nice to be able to just kind of dump the context. But also it's nice to be able to say like, yeah, here's the tool that made this thing that you can go and check out right now. So, preferably I want to do it on the tails of that kind of stuff, but it doesn't really matter as long as it's cool stuff. But I think that's everything for me for today. I think this is everything I wanted to show. And it looks like you guys are running out of questions. But yeah, again, thank you guys for hanging out, and thanks again to the Revision organizers and everyone at Revision for making that awesome party. Really happy to see you guys. You know, Zavi, Trevor, Hoffman, of course, Daniel Collin, Alkama, Bomba, so many people that I met at the party and didn't speak to enough. But it was really fun. So anyway, thanks again, guys. I will see you on Sunday.